The room goes quiet for a second. Someone just said exactly what they knew would get under your skin. Maybe it was disguised as a joke. Maybe it came wrapped in a smile. Maybe it was delivered in front of people whose opinion matters to you. But now your heartbeat has changed. Your jaw is tight. Your mind is already constructing a response. A better insult. A sharper comeback. A verbal weapon capable of making them regret opening their mouth. And right there, before a single word leaves your lips, a battle has already begun. Not between you and them. Between you and yourself. Most men lose that battle before they even realize they're fighting it. Because provocation is rarely about words. Words are only the bait. The real target is your self-control. The person provoking you wants access to something far more valuable than your attention. They want your emotional steering wheel. They want to know whether a few carefully chosen syllables can make you abandon your principles. Whether they can reach into your nervous system and start driving. And the disturbing part, many people can. A stranger online can ruin an entire evening. A coworker can poison a whole day. A relative can drag you back into emotions you thought you left years ago. One sentence, one comment, one jab, and suddenly you're carrying someone else's behavior around like a backpack full of bricks. The Stoics looked at this and asked a dangerous question. If another person can control your emotions whenever they choose, who is actually in charge of your life? That question haunted one man more than most. A man surrounded by enemies. A man criticized constantly. A man responsible for an empire. A man who spent years dealing with betrayal, incompetence, arrogance, manipulation, and endless human drama. Marcus Aurelius. History remembers him as an emperor. What matters more is that he spent his life trying to master something far harder than ruling Rome. He was trying to rule himself. And buried inside his private writings is a mental habit so powerful that it can dismantle provocation before it ever reaches your emotions. Not a comeback. Not a debate tactic. Not psychological manipulation. Something much more dangerous. A perspective. One that turns insults into information. And when you understand it, people lose their ability to drag you into battles you never wanted to fight. Think about the last person who provoked you. What did they actually want? Not truth. Not understanding. Not growth. They wanted movement. A reaction. An emotional twitch. Because reactions are evidence. The moment you become visibly angry, offended, defensive, or desperate to prove yourself, you have revealed something valuable. You have shown them where your buttons are. And once someone knows where your buttons are, they no longer need strength. They only need repetition. This is why emotional control is one of the highest forms of power. Not because it makes you look impressive. Because it makes you difficult to manipulate. Epictetus understood this better than almost anyone. Before becoming a philosopher, he was a slave. Imagine that for a moment. Owned, controlled, subject to another person's will. Yet somehow, from that position, he discovered one of the most liberating ideas ever written. People are disturbed not by events themselves, but by their interpretation of those events. A brutal insight, because it removes the comforting illusion that someone else is responsible for your emotional state. The insult arrives. Then your mind assigns meaning. Only after that does suffering begin. The insult is the spark. Your interpretation is the fuel. Without the fuel, the spark dies. Most people spend their lives attacking sparks. The Stoics learn to control the fuel. And that changes everything. Imagine a man insults your intelligence. There are only two possibilities. He's right, or he's wrong. If he's right, you've received useful information. Why become angry at something that helps you improve? If he's wrong, then nothing meaningful has happened. A false statement cannot damage reality. So why become angry at fiction? Notice how strange this becomes. In either scenario, anger suddenly starts looking unnecessary. This is exactly where Marcus Aurelius operated. When criticized, he trained himself to ask a simple question. Is there truth here? If yes, learn. If no, move on. The ego hates this approach. The ego wants combat. The ego wants revenge. The ego wants witnesses. But wisdom wants clarity, and clarity is much harder to provoke. Imagine a family gathering. Everyone is laughing. Then someone decides to aim at you. The same person who always does. The same comment they've been making for years. The same tired attempt to make you defend your choices. The old version of you immediately takes the bait. You explain. You justify. You argue. You try to prove yourself. Hours later you're still replaying the conversation. Now picture a different response. You listen. You pause. You smile slightly. Then you calmly ask, "What makes you think that?" No anger. No tension. No need to win. Suddenly the energy changes. Because the attack was expecting resistance. And resistance never arrived. Many provocateurs depend on emotional momentum. They push. You push back. The cycle begins. Remove your side of the equation and the entire machine starts malfunctioning. The conversation loses oxygen. The drama collapses. The person searching for conflict suddenly finds themselves standing alone. There is something deeply unsettling about a calm man. Not passive. Not weak. Calm. A weak man avoids conflict because he's afraid. A calm man can enter conflict and remain untouched by it. Those are not the same thing. Seneca once described anger as temporary madness. A moment when reason steps aside and emotion takes command. Look around the modern world and you'll see proof everywhere. People destroy careers in moments of anger. Destroy marriages. Destroy friendships. Destroy reputations. Then spend years cleaning up damage created in minutes. Anger promises power. What it usually delivers is regret. And the person provoking you knows this. They know that once emotion takes over, your judgment gets worse. You become predictable. Predictable people are easy to control. Calm people are not. This becomes even more important when the stakes rise. Because anyone can appear composed during small inconveniences. The real test arrives when the wound is deep. When the betrayal is real. When forgiveness feels impossible. Marcus Aurelius faced exactly that test. One of his most trusted generals turned against him. A man elevated by Marcus himself. A man trusted with enormous responsibility. A man who saw opportunity and chose betrayal. Most rulers would have responded with vengeance. History is filled with leaders who turned betrayal into bloodshed. Marcus chose something else. Restraint. Not because betrayal didn't hurt. Not because he lacked power. Because he understood something many people never learn. The first victim of revenge is often the person seeking it. Hatred changes the one carrying it. Bitterness reshapes character. Resentment becomes a prison built from the inside. Marcus refused to become a different man because another person acted poorly. That may be one of the strongest acts a human being can perform. Not conquering another person, conquering the temptation to become like them. And that brings us to a misunderstanding that ruins Stoicism for many people. Some assume emotional control means becoming emotionless. It doesn't. The Stoics never expected you to stop feeling. They expected you to stop obeying every feeling. There's a massive difference. Your pulse may rise. Your stomach may tighten. You may feel hurt. You may feel angry. You may feel betrayed. That initial reaction is human. The discipline begins afterward. The emotion arrives. Then comes the question. Who takes the next step? You, or the emotion? Most people never separate those two things. They feel anger and immediately become anger. They feel fear and immediately become fear. The Stoics created space, a gap, a pause. Inside that pause lives freedom. Inside that pause lives power. Inside that pause lives choice. And choice is where character is built. This is why strong boundaries and Stoicism belong together. A Stoic does not tolerate disrespect indefinitely. He simply refuses to let emotion dictate the manner in which he responds. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. Sometimes it's, "I won't accept that." Sometimes it's, "We'll continue this conversation later." Sometimes it's, "That's not true." Short, precise, controlled. No emotional leakage. No performance. No drama. Just clarity. People often mistake loudness for strength. Life eventually teaches otherwise. The strongest men in the room are often the ones least interested in proving it. Because confidence doesn't need witnesses. Confidence doesn't need applause. Confidence doesn't need the final word. It only needs self-respect. And self-respect becomes easier when you stop being surprised by human nature. One of the most practical Stoic exercises was preparing for difficulty before it arrived. Every morning Marcus reminded himself he would encounter difficult people, ungrateful people, arrogant people, dishonest people, selfish people, not because he was pessimistic, because he was realistic. Expectation changes experience. The man expecting sunshine feels devastated by rain. The man carrying an umbrella simply keeps walking. Most people begin their day assuming everyone will behave reasonably. Then they become emotionally ambushed when reality disagrees. The Stoics expected friction, so when friction arrived, it found them prepared. Try this. Think of the person most likely to provoke you this week. Picture the scenario. Hear the words. Imagine the attack. Now rehearse your response. Not the emotional response. The composed one. See yourself remaining steady. See yourself refusing the bait. See yourself leaving with your dignity intact. When the moment eventually arrives, something fascinating happens. Part of you recognizes it. You've already been there. The situation no longer feels like an emergency. It feels familiar. And familiarity removes much of fear's power. Of course, even after handling things correctly, anger sometimes lingers. You walk away composed. Hours later you're still replaying the conversation. Still imagining better responses. Still feeling the heat. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. Marcus experienced loss. Seneca experienced exile. Epictetus experienced slavery. These men were not strangers to pain. Their greatness wasn't that they never suffered. Their greatness was that suffering never became their identity. The danger isn't anger. The danger is anger becoming permanent. That's when it transforms into resentment. Resentment is old anger that found a home. And once it settles in, it starts charging rent. Your peace, your attention, your energy, your future. One practice Marcus often returned to was remembering that harmful people are usually operating from confusion. Not wisdom. Confusion. People who hurt others often mistake weakness for strength, cruelty for confidence, arrogance for superiority. Seeing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it changes your relationship to it. The attack stops feeling personal. It starts feeling tragic. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What kind of life creates someone who behaves like that?" The emotional weight changes immediately. Compassion and boundaries can coexist. You can understand someone without allowing them access to your peace. You can recognize their pain without making it your responsibility. You can move forward without carrying them with you. And ultimately, this is what the entire philosophy points toward. Not winning arguments, winning ownership of yourself. Because every provocation presents the same hidden challenge. Who controls your inner world? You, or whoever happens to be standing in front of you. Your achievements cannot be insulted away. Your values cannot be mocked out of existence. Your character cannot be stolen. Only surrendered. The fortress falls only when the gate opens from the inside. Remember that. The next time someone tries to provoke you. The next time they poke at your insecurities. The next time they test your patience. The next time they invite you into a fight. Pause. Take one breath. Ask yourself whether there's truth in what was said. If there is, learn. If there isn't, leave it where it belongs. Then respond only if a response serves your values. Not your ego, your values. Because every time you choose composure over impulse, you strengthen something invisible. Something most people never develop. A mind that cannot be rented by strangers. A character that cannot be negotiated away. A presence that becomes harder and harder to shake. And eventually, people notice. Not because you dominate rooms. Not because you win arguments. Because you stop looking like someone who can be manipulated. That's rare. In a world addicted to reaction, calm becomes intimidating. In a world obsessed with proving itself, self-possession becomes magnetic. In a world where everyone is shouting, discipline becomes power. So I'm curious. What kind of person provokes you most? The arrogant one, The disrespectful one. The passive-aggressive one. The manipulative one. Drop it in the comments. Read what other people write. You'll discover something interesting. Different faces. Different situations. Same human battle. And if this message challenged the way you think about anger, stay close to sovereign mindset. Because emotional mastery is only one piece of the puzzle. There are deeper lessons ahead. Lessons about discipline, detachment, respect, power, human nature, and the quiet strength that makes a man difficult to control. Until then, remember this. The person who angers you controls you only for as long as you allow them to. The moment you stop handing over the keys, the game ends. And most people never see that coming. There's another layer to this that rarely gets discussed. People talk about controlling anger as if anger is the enemy. It isn't. Anger is often a messenger. The real danger appears when you confuse the messenger for the king. A man who never feels anger is not enlightened. He's asleep. Anger can reveal where your standards have been violated. It can reveal where boundaries need strengthening. It can reveal where you've tolerated something for too long. The problem begins when anger is promoted from advisor to ruler. The moment anger starts making decisions, consequences start arriving. Think about how many of life's disasters begin with a temporary emotional state being treated like permanent wisdom. A man feels rejected and destroys a relationship. A businessman feels insulted and burns a valuable opportunity. A father feels disrespected and says something his child remembers for 20 years. The emotion lasts minutes. The consequences last decades. This is why the Stoics trained themselves so relentlessly. They understood that moments become destinies. Tiny reactions become habits. Habits become character. Character becomes fate. And fate is often built from decisions that seemed insignificant at the time. One careless response. One impulsive text. One angry outburst. One moment where emotion grabbed the wheel. Nobody plans to become controlled by their emotions. It happens gradually, one surrender at a time. This is why emotional discipline is not merely self-improvement. It's self-defense. The modern world is full of people competing for your reactions. News outlets compete for them. Social media platforms compete for them. Strangers compete for them. Advertisers compete for them. Algorithms compete for them. Everyone wants access to your emotional state because attention follows emotion. And wherever attention goes, power follows. The person who cannot control his reactions becomes easy to direct. Push here, pull there, create outrage, create fear, create insecurity, create comparison, create envy, and watch him move exactly where you want. The Stoics would have recognized this instantly. The technology is different. Human nature is not. 2,000 years ago people were still manipulating fear. Still exploiting pride. Still provoking anger. Still weaponizing insecurity. The battlefield changes. The human mind remains remarkably familiar. This is why ancient wisdom continues to feel strangely modern. Human beings have upgraded their tools far faster than they've upgraded themselves. A smartphone can connect you to the entire world. It cannot protect you from your own impulses. A powerful career can give you status. It cannot give you peace. Money can purchase comfort. It cannot purchase self-mastery. And without self-mastery, every external victory feels fragile. Because your happiness remains vulnerable to anyone capable of pressing the right button. Ask yourself something honestly. How many people currently have access to your emotional buttons? How many names immediately come to mind? How many individuals can change your mood with a sentence? How many people are occupying mental space without paying rent? Those answers reveal more about your freedom than most people realize. A truly powerful man is not the man everyone fears. It's the man who remains himself regardless of who's standing in front of him. Around praise, around criticism, around success, around failure, around admiration, around disrespect, his identity remains anchored, his center remains intact, his reactions stop depending on circumstances. And once that happens, something remarkable occurs. You become difficult to predict. Not because you're mysterious, because you're principled. Most people react. Principled people choose. There is a massive difference. One is driven from the outside, the other from the inside. And human beings instinctively recognize the distinction. Have you ever met someone whose presence immediately felt solid? Someone who didn't seem desperate for approval? Someone who wasn't performing confidence but simply possessed it? Someone who could listen to criticism without collapsing? Someone who could receive praise without becoming arrogant? Someone who remained steady while everyone else became emotional? You probably respected them immediately. Not because they were loud. Not because they dominated the room. Because they possessed something increasingly rare. Inner stability. That stability becomes visible. People can sense it. They may not have language for it. But they feel it. The same way people can feel desperation. The same way people can feel insecurity. The same way people can feel resentment. Energy leaves fingerprints. And composure leaves some of the strongest. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. What makes his writings so powerful isn't that he was perfect. It's that he wasn't. When you read his private reflections, you don't encounter a man who effortlessly floated above human weakness. You encounter someone constantly reminding himself how to behave. Someone wrestling with irritation. Someone battling frustration. Someone confronting disappointment. Someone repeatedly returning to discipline. That matters. Because many people secretly believe self-mastery means reaching a point where temptation disappears. It doesn't. The temptation remains. The difference is that your response changes. Courage is not the absence of fear. Patience is not the absence of frustration. Discipline is not the absence of impulse. Mastery is choosing correctly despite those things. The temptation to retaliate may never completely vanish. The urge to prove yourself may still appear. The desire to have the last word may still visit from time to time. But eventually those impulses stop running the house. They become guests. And guests don't make decisions. You do. This is one reason the Stoics placed such enormous value on self-observation. Most people spend their lives observing other people. Who said what? Who did what? Who succeeded? Who failed? Who insulted them? Who disappointed them? Meanwhile, they remain strangers to themselves. They know every flaw of their enemies. And almost nothing about their own patterns. The Stoics reversed that. Their attention turned inward, not in a selfish way. In a useful way. They became students of their own minds. They watched their reactions. They studied their impulses. They examined their assumptions. And through that process, they gained something extraordinary. Self-awareness. Because you cannot govern what you refuse to observe. You cannot improve what you refuse to examine. And you cannot master what you refuse to understand. This is why journaling became such a powerful practice for Marcus Aurelius. Meditations was never intended to become a famous book. It was a conversation with himself. A laboratory. A training ground. A place where he could catch his mind wandering and gently pull it back toward wisdom. Imagine the humility required for that. An emperor. The most powerful man in the known world. Still correcting himself. Still learning. Still reminding himself not to become arrogant. Still reminding himself not to become reactive. Still reminding himself not to surrender control of his character. There is something profoundly masculine about that. Not domination. Responsibility. The willingness to govern yourself before attempting to govern anything else. The willingness to become stronger internally instead of merely appearing strong externally. Because appearances are easy. Performance is easy. Real strength is quieter. Real strength shows up when nobody is watching. Real strength appears in private decisions. In internal battles. In moments where there is no applause waiting. Anyone can look composed when life is easy. The test arrives when life isn't. When the criticism is unfair. When the betrayal hurts. When the disrespect feels personal. When your pride is screaming for revenge. That's when philosophy stops being interesting and starts becoming useful. That's when Stoicism leaves the pages of a book and enters your bloodstream. That's when wisdom becomes behavior. And behavior is what changes lives. Imagine two men receiving the exact same insult. The first reacts instantly. He argues, defends, escalates, obsesses. Days later he's still thinking about it. The second pauses, examines the criticism, keeps what is useful, discards what is not, moves forward. The same event, two entirely different outcomes, not because reality changed, because interpretation changed. One surrendered ownership of the experience. The other retained it. This is the hidden power Marcus Aurelius discovered. Events have less control over us than we think. Our judgments carry far more influence than we realize. And once you understand that, life begins to feel different. Not easier, clearer. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of every circumstance. You stop seeing yourself as a hostage to every emotion. You stop treating every inconvenience like a catastrophe. A strange kind of freedom begins emerging. The freedom to remain yourself. The freedom to choose your response. The freedom to walk away from battles that offer no reward. The freedom to preserve your energy for things that actually matter. Because energy is precious. Far more precious than most people understand. Every argument costs energy. Every resentment costs energy. Every obsession costs energy. Every grudge costs energy. Every unnecessary conflict costs energy. And energy spent fighting meaningless battles is energy unavailable for meaningful goals. Your purpose needs energy. Your family needs energy. Your growth needs energy. Your future needs energy. The provocateur wants you to spend that energy on them. The Stoics refused. And perhaps that's the deepest lesson hidden beneath everything we've explored. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every criticism deserves engagement. Not every attack deserves retaliation. Not every battle deserves a warrior. Sometimes the highest form of strength is refusal. Refusal to participate. Refusal to descend. Refusal to surrender your peace. Refusal to become emotionally available to every disturbance that crosses your path. That refusal is not weakness. It is discernment. And discernment becomes one of the greatest advantages a man can possess. Because life is short, far shorter than most people behave as if it is. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on mortality. Not in a gloomy way. In a clarifying way. One day the person who insulted you will be gone. One day the argument will be forgotten. One day the embarrassment will vanish. One day the criticism will disappear into history. One day you will disappear into history. Viewed from that perspective, many of the things that steal our peace begin looking surprisingly small. Not meaningless, small. And small things should not be allowed to govern large portions of your life. So the next time someone attempts to provoke you, remember what is actually happening. You are not being challenged to win an argument. You are being challenged to maintain ownership of yourself. That is the real contest. That is the real victory. And unlike arguments, it leaves no regret behind. Because long after people forget what was said, long after they forget who won, long after the details fade, one thing remains: the person you became while it was happening. Choose that person carefully. Choose him repeatedly. Choose him especially when it's difficult. Because every moment of restraint strengthens him. Every moment of discipline sharpens him. Every moment of composure builds him. Until eventually, the thing that once required enormous effort becomes part of your nature. And when that day arrives, provocations begin losing their magic. Not because the world changed. Because you did. And that is a transformation no insult can ever take away. There is one final realization that separates people who occasionally practice self-control from those who become truly difficult to shake. It has nothing to do with having a better comeback. Nothing to do with sounding intelligent. Nothing to do with appearing calm in front of other people. It concerns something much deeper. Identity. Most provocations only work because they attach themselves to an identity you're afraid of losing. A man insults your intelligence. Why does it sting? Because somewhere inside you is a fear of appearing foolish. Someone mocks your ambition. Why does it linger in your mind? Because part of you worries you haven't achieved enough. Someone questions your value. Why does your chest tighten? Because some piece of you still seeks validation. Provocation is rarely about the words themselves. It's about the insecurity the words manage to touch. The insult is the key. The insecurity is the lock. Without the lock, the key becomes useless. This is why two people can hear the exact same criticism and have completely different reactions. One laughs. The other loses sleep. One shrugs. The other becomes obsessed. The words were identical. The internal landscape was not. And this is where the deepest work begins. Not controlling reactions. Understanding them. Because every time something provokes you disproportionately, life is handing you information. Not information about the other person. Information about yourself. The areas where your confidence still depends on external approval. The places where your identity remains vulnerable. The beliefs you have not fully examined. The wounds that have not completely healed. Most people spend their lives trying to silence critics. Very few spend time investigating why certain criticisms hurt so much. The second path is infinitely more powerful. Because once you understand the wound, the weapon loses effectiveness. A healed scar cannot be stabbed. Marcus Aurelius knew this, which is why so much of his philosophy was directed inward rather than outward. He wasn't trying to control the behavior of other people. He knew that battle could never be won. Human beings would continue being arrogant, selfish, dishonest, impulsive, jealous, cruel. The world would remain the world. His attention stayed fixed on the one territory he could genuinely govern. Himself. And that focus gave him something rare. Stability. Not the stability of perfect circumstances. The stability of an anchored mind. A tree with deep roots still feels the storm. It simply doesn't fall because of it. That is the image worth remembering. Not a fortress disconnected from life. Not a cold statue untouched by emotion. A rooted tree, flexible enough to bend, strong enough not to break, alive enough to feel, wise enough not to be controlled by every gust of wind. Because storms are coming. Not might come, will come. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will disrespect you. Someone will envy you. Someone will betray your trust. Someone will judge your choices without understanding your sacrifices. Someone will attempt to reduce your entire character to a single mistake. These experiences are part of the human contract. No philosophy can remove them. No amount of success can eliminate them. No level of status can rise above them. Even emperors faced them, especially emperors. The question was never whether adversity would arrive. The question is who you'll be when it does. That is why the Stoics treated every ordinary irritation as training. The rude comment, the traffic jam, the delayed plan, the difficult coworker, the impatient customer, the unfair criticism. Small moments. But small moments build large people. Most men wait for a crisis before attempting self-mastery. The Stoics trained during inconveniences so they would be ready for catastrophes. A soldier does not learn discipline in battle. He demonstrates the discipline he practiced before the battle arrived. The same principle applies to life. Every minor provocation is preparation. Every moment of restraint is repetition. Every pause before reacting is another representative. Every time you choose composure over impulse, you strengthen a muscle invisible to everyone except you. And eventually that invisible strength begins changing visible outcomes. Relationships improve. Decisions improve. Leadership improves. Confidence improves. Not because life became easier. Because your responses became better. This is something modern culture often overlooks. People spend years trying to increase influence over the external world while remaining strangers to the internal one. They chase power, money, status, attention, recognition. Yet a single criticism can still destroy their peace. A single rejection can still collapse their confidence. A single insult can still dominate their thoughts. What kind of power is that? A man who owns a kingdom but cannot govern himself remains vulnerable. A man who governs himself possesses something no kingdom can provide. Freedom. Real freedom. The freedom not to be emotionally dragged through life by every passing event. The freedom to remain steady while circumstances change. The freedom to choose values over impulses. The freedom to maintain dignity when others lose theirs. And perhaps that is what Marcus Aurelius was truly protecting all those years. Not merely an empire. His character. Because empires disappear. Titles disappear. Wealth disappears. Reputations rise and fall. Generations forget names. History moves on. Character remains. Character follows you into every room. Every conversation. every challenge, every opportunity, every relationship, every season of life. And character is built exactly where most people least want to build it. In uncomfortable moments, in frustrating moments, in unfair moments, in provoking moments, especially there. That is why the next time someone attempts to pull you into anger, the situation may not be as unfortunate as it first appears. Hidden inside the annoyance is an opportunity. An opportunity to discover whether your principles are stronger than your impulses. An opportunity to practice self-respect. An opportunity to strengthen emotional discipline. An opportunity to become the kind of man who cannot be rented by the opinions of others. The kind of man whose peace is not available for purchase. The kind of man who remains himself regardless of the circumstances surrounding him. And when you begin living this way, something unexpected happens. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop needing constant validation. You stop needing the final word. Because your confidence is no longer being manufactured externally. It is being generated internally. Quietly, consistently, deliberately. The noise of other people starts losing volume. Their approval matters less. Their criticism matters less. Their attempts to provoke you become increasingly transparent. You begin seeing what is really happening. A person trying to transfer their chaos into your mind. A person attempting to recruit you into an emotional state. A person offering you a burden that was never yours to carry. And for perhaps the first time, you simply decline. Not with arrogance, not with contempt, not with superiority, with clarity. You understand the invitation. You just don't accept it. That may be one of the most powerful skills a human being can develop. The ability to decline unnecessary suffering. The ability to remain centered in a world designed to distract, provoke, and destabilize. The ability to walk away with your peace still intact. So when that next moment arrives, and it will arrive sooner than you think, remember this. The goal is not to silence every critic. The goal is not to defeat every opponent. The goal is not to prove yourself to every doubter. The goal is to remain the author of your own mind. To remain stronger than your impulses. To remain loyal to your principles when emotions demand otherwise. And if you need a single thought to carry with you, let it be this. Every provocation is a test disguised as an insult. Not a test of your intelligence. Not a test of your status. Not a test of your worth. A test of your command over yourself. Pass that test often enough, and something remarkable begins to happen. The world doesn't become less chaotic. You become less available to chaos. The insults still come. The critics still appear. The difficult people still exist. But they stop finding an unlocked door. Because the fortress holds. The roots deepen. The gate remains closed. And for the first time, perhaps in years, your peace belongs to you again. That is real power. That is real freedom. That is the path of the Stoic. And that is the standard of sovereign mindset.